Welcome to Crochet Basics, part 13. I'm going to be showing you several ways to weave in your ends at the end of your project. The most basic way, the first square here will show you, you'll put your yarn needle on your yarn. The way I do this is give the end of the yarn a nice twist, real firm twist there, and a tiny little loop, and push that through the head of the yarn needle. And as I've mentioned before, my preference is actually to use a steel hook, but for the sake of doing the video and just visualizing it, making it a little bit easier, we're going to use the larger eye of the needle. We've finished off our work, pulled through the yarn, and now it's time to weave in the ends. The way I like to do this, sometimes you have to weave down depending on what stitch you've used, if it's a taller post. I like to do that until I'm at the bottom of the stitches, where I can then weave underneath those stitches. See, I can just pick up the loop there, the upside down V, and I like to go through at least an inch worth, if not a little bit further, because I like to do it a little bit further. All right, so let's say I'm happy enough with weaving it along that far. I like to go halfway through the next stitch, and I'll show you why. Let me first do it without, I'll pull back. Okay, if I just go through the full stitch, then this next step, which I feel is very important, I won't clip my yarn just right there. I lock in the loop. It might be kind of hard to see with this light colored yarn. I like to go over one loop or one part of that V and then dive under and go back the way I came from. So I'm going to be working over this loop here and under these. Well, when I do that, I'll just pull it this far because I wanted to show you why I don't do it stopping at this point. When I give that a pull, I'm exaggerating it here, but it's able to pull that further and cause a little bit of gaping. It's not doing it so much here because I've got single crochet, but if you have a taller post stitch, you'll notice that more. All right, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go ahead and work it halfway through this next stitch. So you can see here's the other bar, the other part of that upside down V. And I'll pull that through. Now I'll do the same thing. It's called locking in your stitch, locking in the loop. I'm just going to go up and over that first loop. And then I'll continue to wiggle my way through to the end and pull this through. All right. So you can see here before I pull it tight, again, it's halfway through that stitch. It's up and over that stitch leg. And now as I pull, it doesn't create any gaping here. It just goes ahead and pulls right on through. It stretches that stitch a little bit, but it's nothing that you'd be able to see from especially the front side, and really not even able to see too much on the back side. So that's pretty securely woven in, and that is a basic way to weave in your yarn. All right, another way to weave in your ends, this is just a progression of what I just showed you, really. We're going to go ahead and we'll just say I'm working double crochet, so I'm going to work down to the 4th chain. When I get to that end, watch how I catch that loop up Okay, I've come to the end, and I want to work that stitch up with me. Actually, I'll pull through here. All right. I'm going to grab both of those ends and work that first yarn over through 2, and I'll even do that second yarn over through 2. So now my yarn tail has been woven in that last stitch, and it is at the same height as the stitch tops. So I'm going to go ahead and do my chain 3 turn my work. Now this is something that I often do. I work over my yarn ends while I crochet. Okay, so I'm just holding it back here. It's almost like it's a third loop. 1, 2, and then 3. So I'm doing my stitch, yarn over, going through the set of loops, and laying that yarn end on top of the hook. And just crocheting right over that yarn end. So it's been captured inside of there. Now to do this, I like to leave a longer yarn end than I actually left on this sample, but hopefully you get the idea. Okay, I'm still holding it back there with my finger and picking it up, stitch plus the yarn end, and crocheting over it. Now my preference is to weave it down like this again for at least an inch, inch and a half or so. And then I would go ahead then and lock in this loop and then bring it back down through. I'll show you how I do it when I have a shorter yarn tail like this, because I didn't plan ahead. All right, because I know this is the loop I want to lock over, I am going to just pick up these loops coming down here. It's getting a little stuck. Okay, bringing the eye of the needle as close to that yarn end as I can. And I'll still do my hard twist there. Okay, pop it into the eye of the needle, which is right there. Pull it back a little bit so it's got room to move through the tunnel. All right. That's pretty securely worn in. And had I had a longer tail, I would have clipped that edge. So I feel pretty secure about that piece not coming undone. You can go ahead and just finish up that row. So now I can just continue working on. That first yarn end has already disappeared into the back side of my work. All right, so this is a little bit different. I'm changing my yarn color, which I will show you how to do in a future video. I want to show you how I handle all these yarn ends as they come up. All right. I need to establish which is the back side of the work, and we'll just pretend that this is the right side. So I tuck up the white yarn tail along the back side, and just like I did with the pink yarn, I'm going to, I don't know if I quite got both of those loops, pick up both of the stitch loops and lay the white yarn tail like a third stitch loop on the back side, and then just work on over that. Okay, So I'll continue doing that. I don't want to pull that white yarn tight. If it's a little loose, it's fine. I can tighten it up a little bit before I lock in the last loop. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and leave that white yarn loop tail just hanging off. All right, now that I've come over on this side, starting my second row of the color, I am going to lift up the blue yarn tail and hold it along the back side. And begin working on around that tail like so. Okay, and I can ease that. You don't want to hold it tight. I've basically just flipped the yarn tails from the one edge over to the other edge. But the work of weaving in the ends is halfway finished. For both of them. All right, so I want to still catch up that yarn tail, that third loop on the hook, so to speak, or the stitch. All right, so now that has been halfway woven in, the white has been halfway woven in. What I would do for both of these is jump over the one loop to lock it in. And finish weaving that in. Okay. Now because I've got two colors, I maybe don't want that to show. So what I can do is just pick up a loop down here. And I think I'm splitting my yarn there. There we go. I'll lock in over that loop. And now go through the tunnel. Have to wiggle that yarn needle through. All right, I'm going to just stop right there. Okay, at this point, if it still looks real loose over here, I can give it a tug until I'm happy, and that can be clipped off then. So the blue yarn loop, or yarn tail, all right. I can do the same thing. I could pick up a yarn loop here, which would be my tendency to do that since I didn't end halfway through a stitch. Or you could just up and over this leg if you wished. All right. And the yarn came off because I left a little bit too short of a tail there. It's all right. Again, don't want that to be too tight. There we go. All right, so at this point you can cut those yarn ends. I don't have my scissors just right handy, otherwise I would do that. But you would just snip them off close to the edge. Snip, snip. And you can do that as you crochet. You can do that at the end and just have a mass session of weaving in your ends. I tend to kind of do that and watch a movie while I do it. But that is how to weave in your ends, basic ways to do. All right, I'll see you in the next video.